Hello Rebel and welcome back to my life. Sorry, we're back on the old camera. I haven't managed to save up enough to get the new Sony, but man, I cannot wait to have it in my hands. So a few weeks ago, I released a one-take video that I made on my phone in which I was not doing particularly well. And I talked about having saved a guy's life earlier that day, but I didn't go into too much detail and I haven't given any updates since. So let's talk about this, exactly what happened and all the weirdness that's happened since, both externally and internally. Up front, I want to let you know that this video is going to get into some weird and gross body stuff. If that is triggering for you, this is not going to be a video you want to watch. So, just over 3 weeks ago, on the 10th of September, our town was getting completely uninhabitable because of the smoke from all the Oregon fires that were happening. And our house isn't the most airtight, and so we had no way to escape the smoke. And Megan started to get this really troubling cough. So that puts us in a tough spot, right? We have to hope it's not the Rona. If it is, we don't want to be around anyone, but we were pretty sure it wasn't COVID because the virus is almost non-existent in our county because we wear our fucking masks and we see very few people, and none of the people we do see have gotten COVID or have been in contact with anyone who has. We've got really good contact tracing here. So there's the dilemma. Don't want to go anywhere because of COVID, can't stay in the house because McMinnville has turned into Mordor. In the end, we decided to take a short trip to my uncle's houseboat on the Columbia River. By the way, fun side fact, boathouse, house for a boat. Houseboat, house is a boat. The air quality was much better up there. His house actually keeps the outside air outside, and he also has air filters. And we were able to visit while still maintaining some degree of distance and with a minimum risk of exposing anybody to anything. We went back and forth on the idea, but Megan's cough was pretty gnarly, so I pulled the trigger, loaded the family up in the car, and we booked it for Portland. Get it? Booked it? Because I write books? Or at least I used to, in the before times. Now, we only ended up staying overnight. The next day, McMinnville's air had started to get better, and Portland's had started to get worse. So we were kind of torn again. We talked about it for a few hours, but in the end, we decided to pack up and head home. We packed up, we headed to the parking lot of the houseboat community, and that's when everything happened. Last chance, this is where I get into some gross body stuff. If you don't want to hear it, you should tune out now. I saw a man's legs sticking out from between two cars in the parking lot, and when I went over to him, I found him lying on his back, staring at the sky, not breathing, no pulse. I pulled out my phone, I called 911, and I ran over to Megan and told her to take the kids back down to the houseboat and wait for me. So the 911 operator tells me to start applying CPR. I learned how to do that when I was a teenager, but I don't remember it, but that's okay, because she walked me through it. It's surprisingly simple, and it has changed since I was a kid. For one thing, you don't breathe into the victim's mouth anymore, which I am thankful for in this year of our COVID 2020. I just don't want to be putting my mouth on anyone's mouth right now, unless it's my wife. Nothing against you personally, Jim. Sorry. Yeah, the guy's name is Jim. If you missed the last video, by the way, this has a happy ending, so breathe easy about that. Anyway, so I put one hand over the other and put them on Jim's chest, and I pump. It was once a second, maybe? I don't know. The 911 operator chanted a rhythm over the phone, and I just did what she said. Second side note, I tried to figure out a way to get in contact with that 911 operator. I wanted to thank her and to let her know that things turned out okay, but I couldn't figure out how to reach her. But seriously, she was amazing. She was totally calm the whole time, no matter how much I was freaking out. Anyway, back to CPR. Here's a really disturbing thing about CPR. Apparently, if you do it right, there's a good likelihood that you're going to crack or break ribs. This is not something I was told before I started CPR. It was something I was told after I broke a couple of his ribs and asked the 911 operator what the had just happened. And in retrospect, it is probably good that they don't tell you that ahead of time, because it would have likely made me much less eager to start the whole CPR thing and to press as hard as I could. And it is better to have broken ribs than to be dead. Two more people showed up in the parking lot and they, came to help. So after I did CPR for about a minute, I swapped out with another guy who was there. The other person who had showed up, she ran to the parking lot's front gate to hold it open for when the ambulance showed up. And I grabbed someone else and had them run to get an AEG. AEG? AEG? ADG? AED. It's an AED. It stands for Automated External Defibrillator. This is the zappy thing that electrifies the chest in an attempt to restart the heart. Once again, this was not my idea. This was the 911 operator asking if there was an AED around. I did not know because I did not live there, but somebody else did and they ran and grabbed it. The AED shows up. We've been keeping CPR going this whole time, and he's starting to give these really deep gasps, but like once every minute or so. Other than that, no breathing, no pulse, and his eyes are still open and just staring up at the sky. So now we have to get the guy's shirt off so we can apply the AED. Third fun side note, modern AEDs talk to you and give you instructions on how to use them. But they're kind of like antagonistic about it. Like the machine was all apply leads to the victim's chest. It's like, okay, I get it. But again, that's probably a good thing in retrospect because, you're probably freaking out if you're in that situation. I certainly was. Now, one of the guys from the housing community applies the AED and uses it on Jim, and it works. But here's the thing. here's how we could tell that it had worked. When Jim had fallen, he had landed hard on the back of his head and split it open, but because his heart was not beating, it was a little hard to notice that that had happened. And then when the AED restarted his heart, the wound on the back of his head started to bleed. A lot. Fortunately for everybody involved, this was when the ambulance showed up and a team of EMTs jumped out and kind of took over from us. We did help them drag Jim out from between the cars into a more open space, which, you know, got a lot more blood everywhere. But they got Jim the rest of the way back, loaded him up in the ambulance, and took him off to the hospital. And I staggered away from the scene, found a quiet spot, sat down, and cried. A lot. Yeah, I've been trying to keep a chipper face on this whole thing, but holy crap, Rebel. Holy crap. This was one of the most upsetting things that's ever happened to me. And it really just made matters worse because I'd already been having an incredibly bad, no good day. My family and I were choking on smoke. I wasn't able to get any work done, and I had been trying all day to talk to my aunt, but the phone kept dropping us. So yeah, I walked away and I cried a lot. And then I had a beer, and then I went home. Don't worry, Megan drove. And in the meantime, Jim went to the hospital, and things were a little bit touch and go. He was in the ICU and got a lot of tests. I believe he was like completely out of it for a good long while. But then he woke up, and he started to recover. And just a few days ago, he came home from the hospital. And like, that's because of 3 people who happened to be there whose names I didn't ever get. And it's because of me. But here's the thing. Here's the problem with that. Here's where things get weird. Since then, I've been getting regular updates from my aunt about Jim's progress, and I received a very lovely card from Jim's wife, Sharon. Just in general, there's been a lot of gratitude and admiration flowed towards me, and it feels very wrong. Here's the thing. If you've been around for a while, you know me, you know I've got a bit of the old ego. I absolutely love when people send me positive reviews of my books or tell me they like my writing or my YouTube videos, and I can have that, you know? But I can't have it in this case, because I really feel like I didn't do anything. That sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud. You just heard the whole story that I told you. I know I did something, but mostly it feels like what I did was dial a phone number that has been ingrained in my mind since birth, panic, force myself to obey clear, precise instructions through my panic and relay some of those instructions to others, and then go cry. A lot. So when I was thinking about why this bothered me, I couldn't figure it out for a while, which is why I didn't make a video about it before. Because this sounds like some kind of false humility tripping, and I promise you, it's not. Again, if you know me, you know that false humility tripping just isn't a thing that I do. But what I have come to realize is that I didn't save Jim. A system saved Jim. A system that has been placed into our society through the rules and the policies that have been created and then built upon for the benefit of society. That 911 operator and her training and the fact that she was paid to sit there and be ready to receive phone calls is part of that system. The fact that the 911 phone number exists and has been taught to children for decades is part of that system. The AED that was present and that was kept charged up for just such an occasion and programmed with that antagonistic voice is part of that system. And when that system was needed, all that had to happen was a couple of moving parts were plugged into place and the whole thing went off exactly like it was supposed to. Jim was plugged into the position of person who needs assistance, and I and 3 others were plugged into the position of person who is going to render assistance. That's why I feel like I didn't really do much. It was more like I was being used by a system that was built and put in place to save people's lives. There was no judgment required on my part. I didn't make a decision that led to a good outcome. I didn't know who Jim was, or who he mattered to, or what he believed or cared about. Because that's not part of any of this. The system that we as a society have built, leaped into action, used the parts that had been given to it in this case, and saved Jim's life. And this is an incredible thing. In my opinion, this is the best thing human beings do. We identify a thing that happens with greater or lesser frequency, and we build a system for it. If it is a negative thing, we build a system that deters it or protects people from it. If it is a positive thing, we build a system that strengthens it or makes it available to more people. The gratitude that I have received, I get that. I was there, I did the thing. Okay, but I feel like admiration is misplaced. I would rather people admire the fact that over the last several decades, less than an eye blink in comparison to the long timeline of human history, we have built a system where a man can collapse from a heart attack with no doctors or medical professionals around, and a handful of nearby strangers can be activated by another human being miles and miles away to save that man's life. 500 years ago, this would have been impossible. 100 years ago, it was probably impossible. And that is not a story of rugged individualism or some amazing hero or group of heroes. That is a story of mankind's best impulses and best instincts and best accomplishments combined into one miraculous event. Please do your best to resist worship of individuality at the expense of the social good. We need more systems like these that will save more people like Jim. Right now, at this very moment, an extremely prominent pusher of individualism is receiving the full benefits of a societal system designed to keep him healthy and alive, while simultaneously doing his best to keep others from accessing that same system. And despite that, the system is still going to do its best to help him, because that's what it does, no matter who you are and no matter what you've done. Give that a think, Rebel. I'll talk to you next week. Oh, hey, speaking of next week, I'm going to make a whole video about this, but because of COVID and its impact on shipping, if you want to get any of my books for yourself or someone else for the holidays, you should do it right now. Personally, I recommend the Underrealm full hardcover collection. It's 10 awesome fantasy books in 4 awesome fantasy volumes for an awesome price. Seriously, once we sell out of the ones that I have in stock, we probably won't be able to get any more before the end of the year. So if you want one, order yours today. You can find links to the hardcover set and to my whole book catalog in the description below. And that is all I've got for you today, Rebel. I want to give an extra special shout out to my supporters on Patreon who make all my YouTube videos possible. If you want to become one of those awesome and incredibly attractive individuals, click on the Patreon link in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next Friday. Bye!